Welcome back to the show. Well, sleep can be a hard thing to come by for a lot of us, especially in these times. So, if you have found yourself suffering from sleepless nights, or maybe you struggle to stay asleep, our next guest has written the perfect book to inspire much needed rest and relaxation. Joining us now to talk about her brand new book entitled Nothing Much Happens, podcaster and yoga teacher Kathryn Nicolai. Welcome to the show, Kathryn.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, Kathryn, we've seen the statistics about sleep or lack thereof during the pandemic. There is even the term coronasomnia that has been coined during the pandemic. So let's start by talking about why sleep is so challenging for so many right now.
Yeah, this was already an issue that so many people were experiencing even before 2020. But obviously, anxiety interrupts our sleep. And we also have all of our regular routines that have been thrown out of whack because we're home and we don't expect to be. So there's a lot of reasons that probably you don't even need me to explain that you're experiencing yourself. As we try to settle down for sleep at night, our minds have a lot to chew on.
Okay, so what I love about what you do on your podcast is that you read bedtime stories. And you have had such success with people around the world tuning in, people writing to you saying, you know what? They're off their sleep meds as a result of your bedtime stories. And people writing saying, they're listening to you to get through chemo and have some restful sleep through this. I mean, these are just a sample of some of the stories. What do you think it is about an old-fashioned bedtime story that does the trick?
Well, I think there's a reason that storytelling has always been part of human culture for as long as there have been humans, because there is something therapeutic about it. And most of us can relate to these memories of being read bedtime stories when we were kids. There was something really comforting about that. And I always explain it sort of like your brain needs a place to rest. And if you don't give it some place to rest, it'll race all night. It'll keep you up all night. But the story becomes a place that you can safely lay your mind into. There's not a lot of action in it. That's kind of the idea. But there's a lot of cozy, soothing details. And I think also just hearing a voice beside you, a lot of people have told me I'm alone in lockdown. And I don't feel alone anymore when I go to bed at night.
Oh, and maybe then by design, your stories take place in a village you've created called the Village of Nothing. Tell us about this place.
Yeah, I always saw this as sort of happening in one universe, in one connected neighborhood, because I also really think the idea of connection is important. I sort of feel like it's the reason that everybody exists, is just so that we can be connected to one another. So I liked the idea of thinking about the baker who runs the bakery might live next door to the person who went to the Christmas tree farm, that there's these little, and in fact, there's little Easter eggs planted in the podcast. If you listen very closely, you'll see the overlap. But I also wanted it to be a neighborhood full of folks, because I want to represent different kinds of people in the stories, so that whoever you are, as you listen, you can imagine yourself in the stories. And also, I'm just a map nerd, and getting to put a map in my book was so incredibly exciting. You always know when you get a book and there's a map in the front that it's going to be great.
You're so right. I love a good map in a book. And one of the things actually that you were able to do in this book that you haven't been able to do in a podcast format is include all of these incredible images and that readers are treated to. So you've got everything from recipes and meditation tips. You've got bath time rituals and these beautiful images and quotes that are scattered throughout the book that are just so lovely. So why was having a visual element to the book really important to you?
It was really important to me on a personal level because I have a condition called aphantasia, which means that I have no inner eye. I can't visualize anything at all, and wasn't completely aware that y'all could. When I found out that you guys were being literal, when you said, picture this, I was a little surprised. So, when we were thinking about the book, I was sort of greedy for it. I wanted to see what this world looked like. And I've always really loved illustrated art, and I wanted it to be inclusive. I wanted to show that there were all different kinds of people living in the village of nothing much. I think when you look at the art, it feels like you could climb right into the stories. And that's always my intention. Pull yourself in, wrap them around you like a blanket, and get a great night's sleep.
Oh, and let's talk about the stories that you've written. They are charming. They are so sweet, and I understand also very personal to you as well. So take us through the process of the formula of you crafting these stories and where this all comes from in your own personal life.
Yeah, I do think of it as having a sort of specific recipe. There's a recipe for a good bedtime story, and it's always going to involve a soothing activity, something that's pleasurable and relaxing. But it's also going to have an element of nostalgia. It should be recognizable and familiar. And sometimes it's a feeling of nostalgia, even for something that you yourself haven't quite experienced, but it's so relatable that it sounds wonderful to think about. And then lots and lots of sensory details, because sensory details keep us present in the present moment. Whenever we're more present with our senses, we're naturally less anxious. And all of that comes out of my years and years as a yoga and meditation teacher, that knowing that if I can keep people in their bodies and connected to their senses, I'm going to help them reduce their anxiety and improve their concentration.
Kathryn, we know in addition to yoga and meditation that you just mentioned, you do a lot of cross body work to help ease feelings of anxiety. So, can you explain for those who don't know what it is, what cross body is, and why it's helpful, particularly with anxiety?
Yeah. So cross body, or sometimes called cross lateral exercises, are basically just when you do a physical activity, you cross the midline of your body. It has a bunch of other benefits besides just helping with things like anxiety and depression. It helps improve cognition and dexterity and balance and things like that. It's really great for kids as their brains are developing, but it also turns out to be great for us as our brains are aging because it improves neuroplasticity. So when you cross the midline of your body in an activity, you're forcing the neurons to fire across the corpus callosum, that bridge between the two hemispheres. Anxiety usually happens in just one hemisphere of your brain. So when you can get both hemispheres of your brain to work together at the same time, you're sort of changing the subject and saying, nope, we're not doing that. We're doing this. And it's quite soothing. And a lot of the nice thing about it is that you can often do it in a quite discreet way. You could toss a bottle from hand to hand. So you're in a meeting back when, or eventually when we are having meetings face to face, and you felt a little anxiety. It could be a little activity that you did for 30 seconds. Nobody would even think you were doing anything besides just, fiddling around, but you'd be getting your brain, your nervous system to settle back down.
Can you take us through a quick cross body exercise, like seated?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just take a couple of deep breaths first because it always helps. So let's go in through the nose, out through the mouth, in through the nose, with sound. I'll do that one more time. And when you exhale, I'm going to have you purse your lips and extend your exhale a long time. Like you're blowing through the smoke. Perfect. And bring your hands in front of you. You're going to go palms towards you and just lock one thumb around the other like you got a little bird and rest it on your chest. And then we're just going to start a nice slow tap. I often notice when I start, sometimes if I'm anxious, I'm tapping faster, and then I sort of settle into it. Let's take another breath in. One more time, nice slow taps.
Ladies, you keep doing that because I'm going to say a big thank you to you, Kathryn. I don't know about anybody else who's joining us, but I do feel more relaxed already. And we want to remind you that Nothing Much Happens, the book, it is available now and everywhere. We'll be right back after this.